Welcome to the Stories Are Soul Food podcast, presented by Cannonball Books, the kids' fiction imprint of Cannon Press.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road.
Here we are. Is this episode 85?
This is. Wow.
Octo Cinco.
I think that's a...
Is that how they do it?
I think so. That's how the Spanish...
Does anybody watch these videos? Can we stop filming?
I'm afraid to say that our last video was very popular.
Blarg. That's unfortunate.
So I'm trying to get total numbers for us so we can.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Because it would be great if we could just turn the camera off and not worry about it.
The camera doesn't matter.
I feel like having just a camera in a podcast is not necessarily interesting. So,
well, I think it's your facial expressions.
Yeah, it's my facial expressions that are not interesting. I'll work on making them even less interesting.
Yeah.
But luckily the seasons are changing, so pretty soon I'll always be wearing sweatpants.
Oh man, it's about to get the chill was in the air.
It is. Also, I am attempting one of those things creative people do sometimes when they rearrange all the pencils on their desk to try to be more productive. I'm going to be attempting that here for the next couple of months, where I am going to go dark completely Tuesdays through Thursdays.
Oh, wow.
I'm just going to vanish and be unreachable in the hopes that this will make me more productive.
Yeah.
And
well, this will be a fun sociological experiment.
I'll at least do it for a couple of months. And then if I don't get vast amounts of writing completed in that transition, it will have been a complete waste of reorganizing my pencils.
I mean, of a lot of your Tuesdays through Thursdays, but nothing else, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
There's
so it's interesting because it's, I have plenty of writer friends and creative friends who get to be more reclusive than I do. And, being a part of a community that's kind of big and thriving is
in a small space.
In a small town has itself some added twists and turns when it comes to like unbroken writing time, which pushes into the evenings, which it will still do, I'm sure, for me. But we're recording this on a Monday instead of a Tuesday. We're going to try this Monday thing. And so Mondays and Fridays will be the days when I exist in the modern world. And Tuesdays through Thursdays, I will be vamoose.
That'll be fun. We're interested to hear if it works.
I'm going to try to get a bat phone.
A bat
phone that only, I don't know, only my wife could call. But the problem is that she's the one who texts and calls the most. So it might be
Heather, true confessions.
So that's.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to try it. We'll see how it goes.
This is full darkness.
You're
writing in complete darkness.
Yeah. Complete
with a bat phone.
Yes, complete technological lack of access.
Okay,
let's just say that I'll be writing without access to the internets. I will have my secret phone reachable by children and children.
Nice. That's good.
I don't know yet who the secret list will be. It actually has that number. I'll have my like dad on Tuesday through Thursday number in my kids' phones.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We're gonna try it, and
that's cool.
Maybe I'm just gonna catch up on all my Netflix.
Yeah, maybe so. Have you read any Wallace Stegner? The Crossing to Safety. Do you know Crossing to Safety?
I don't.
There's a very sad character who's like an artist who never does anything.
A very sad character who's reminding you of me.
No, I was going to say it's the opposite, but he has this perfectly organized workshop. And that's like the moment when the main character realizes this guy's home life is not good, when he goes into his workshop and it's spotless. And there's not a thing going on in there. Anyways, great novel. Right. Not reminiscent of you, but
so what are we actually talking about today? Although we're not talking about my attempt to be productive.
Well, first question is, I think this will be releasing right before Rings of Power drops.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I had for you is, how does a studio make anything turn into a success? Like, because they're never going to come out and be like, this flopped.
This was a terrible mistake.
Yeah. I guess
Mm.
maybe we have to watch their Amazon studio turnover like 3 months from now, perhaps. That would be
Yeah.
the sign of success. But I was watching how they're manipulating the numbers for that Game of Thrones spinoff and also the Obi-Wan show, and
Yep.
how they're just
Yep.
they're tracking how people are falling off a cliff as far as finishing the series. So I was just
Yeah.
curious if you had any insider.
Yeah. They'll try to find whatever metric can be reported. Well, what's important is when you look at the press releases to kind of pay attention to which things are not discussed. Like
Okay.
which things are not being referred to, which things are not being discussed. When they're talking about some big number, which, if they're not talking about completions or they're not talking about whatever, then that tells you that the completions are bad. They if anything was good, they're going to be telling you. Anything they're not mentioning is not going to be great, or just as mediocre or medium or whatever. Definitely not not worth the amount.
Okay. I see.
But mostly the biggest plan here is to bank, and this works. This is the most effective plan, to bank on the complete short attention span of the American viewing public, that people won't remember and will probably watch it anyway,
Mm-hmm.
because they will watch everything.
Yeah.
And so they're going to run out and they're going to come back. They're going to run out of whatever other show they were watching, and they're going to circle back around and, hit this one.
Yeah.
So if you have a real bad show on your hands, your best bet is to trust the bird brains of the American viewing public.
Meaning they're going to watch it anyway. And
Yeah,
then forget about it.
or if you're like, I don't want them to watch this because it'll make us a cultural punchline for the next 20 years. If it's really bad and you're like, man, this is horrendous, and we're getting just destroyed on socials, all you need to do is feed something else to the bears. Just throw some other piece of meat over the fence,
Gotcha.
and you'll be fine. Just
Okay.
move on. Everybody's going to forgive Amazon. That's not like they're canceling Prime.
Right. We did. Yeah.
It was just a waste of over $1 billion.
Just that. Okay. Cool.
You needed the write-off anyway.
Yeah. Right. There you go.
So
Just helps the profit margin.
hopefully it'll
tax.
keep a drone off of my doorstep for at least another 20 minutes.
That's what we need to. Yeah. We need to hope that their drone budget went into creating weird
Was stalled
derivative
slightly.
Tolkien products.
Yes. Yeah. But it makes me happy that it's this bad and that people are receiving it this way.
Yeah.
But
I've heard
how
from
could they not, though?
Right. I've heard from some of our listeners that we can't know until we watch the first episode.
Oh, guess what?
But we do.
Yes. Yes. There's some things that can't be unknown.
Yeah.
And I don't mean unknown as foggy. I mean, once known cannot be unknown.
Yeah.
I saw exactly 2 trailers, I think.
Yeah.
And that was that studio putting its best foot forward to try to convince me that it was going to be good. And so I now have certain knowledge,
Yeah. I mean, you didn't even get to the plot one, which was about Galadriel finding her sword, is what I heard. I too. Have
I
not
did. Yeah.
watched
Was that trailer 3?
Yeah.
And if
Or 4. I actually lost
whatever it
track.
is, if the trailers were so ineffective that they couldn't sell me through to the next trailer, they couldn't actually close my interest enough to get me to watch the next 2-minute teaser,
Yeah.
then we are really in trouble.
Yeah.
Because they have hours and hours of content that they want me to consume. And I am a
You fell
absolute
off.
Tolkien fan,
Yeah.
and I fell off. So I fell off between the trailers, and you couldn't capture me. You couldn't even get me through the credits of the pilot episode.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Well, that's fine.
anyway,
That'll be, yeah. Moving on to other things. The question I wanted to ask you is, this is based on a few reader questions about how do you write real Christians into fiction without ruining your story?
Yeah.
And they said that a few ways. Some people are wondering, hey, if I would pray in normal life in this situation, I'm okay with having my characters pray, right? But at the same time, I think they've heard some of our episodes on how good themes can sometimes make bad stories. And then I wanted to ask you, how did you approach that? Because if I remember correctly, I don't think you have prayer. Well, you don't have your internal character prayer, where I know in real life there would be prayer happening, right?
Yeah,
so Cyrus isn't stopping to pray, or Henry, but there are some prayers before meals that are mentioned. Like
there's prayers, and then there's also liturgical prayer. There's things like that. But I have not. I'm scrolling through 13 novels in my head.
Yeah, sorry. So putting you on the spot.
Trying to think about whether or not I've ever described an internalized prayer, and I don't know that I have. And it's not out of like some hard and fast rule that it can't be done. But when I have had a character cry out, it's like basically sort of a God help us, kind of a situation. I think I've had it verbalized, and it's usually been in a situation that's real time, fast enough that it's not a time for a devotional. It's not it's not a devotional setting. I think about Captain John Smith in Empire of Bones singing the Psalms as he's going to his death. I think about I do plenty of that, and I consider that a form of prayer.
Right.
That he's singing Psalm 22 as he's walking to his destruction.
Right.
And he's doing it not like a pirate singing a pirate song. He's doing it because he knows he's going to his destruction.
Yeah.
And it's the right prayer. It's the right words for it.
It's the language of someone about to be.
Yeah. So I'd say one of the ways that I have handled it is by attempting to elevate it a little bit. And so this is a stretch of realism. I do think that art at its best elevates the reader, elevates the viewer, elevates the consumer of the art. And it's not a mirror. So I'm not trying to show, and the books I appreciate the most, and the books I respect the most, the same with films and TV and everything else. Those things are not a mirror showing the viewer, showing the reader themselves. Although they can,
right,
in part, and in different parts, they do, and they pull them in.
Yeah.
But the goal is not to say, are you spiritual in this way? Let me show you a character who is spiritual in this way. I've tried to show people a spirituality that's a little more, like there's a little more meat to it, or there's a more substance to it. A character who has Psalm 22 at his fingertips, like in that moment,
is one who could pray.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, and that's not what most people have. Most people don't have the ability to just grab a psalm because they're about to die and it's time for their death song. And so they're going with Psalm 22. I'm not trying to show the reader, themselves.
Yeah.
I'm trying to elevate the reader by showing them a character who is going to death faithfully and with a nobility and with a spirituality that's more substantive. It's got more protein.
So be not far off, for grief is near. That does elevate what would be a typical quick prayer that would come to most readers'
And so
mind.
he's, I pull stuff out of the older Scottish Psalter for John Smith. And so, one that
matches character-wise.
Yeah, matches his character. And so I use that for him because it's something that would push the reader. It actually kind of challenges the reader and pushes the reader to something a little deeper and a little more. The same thing with the call and response, the liturgical call and response that you see in Ashtown. It makes, and this is actually this is something I wanted to have happen, and I can testify after, almost 10 years of the books. 10 years? No. But it feels like about 10 years since Dragon's Tooth. After a while of the books being out, I can testify to the fact that it has had this effect, is that I wanted it to be potent and kind of moving in a way that would make the readers want that, crave that kind of potency.
Okay.
That kind of cultural and spiritual potency, even in a decaying institution, to see something like that. And so I've not given scenes of characters having internal moments of devotion or things like that, even though I could realistically do that. There's plenty of times when I could go inside the head of Cyrus or Antigone or one of these characters and show them praying. That's, would it be absolutely believable in any number of these situations? That's not something that I think pushes the reader.
Okay.
And that's why I haven't done it. It's not on principle.
Yeah.
I find it less interesting.
Yeah.
And doesn't push the reader or challenge the reader culturally in the way that I would like this particular story or art to do. It's not that I will never do it. It's not that I might be able to even go back through all the novels and find a place where one of my characters has. So I couldn't even promise that I haven't done it.
Yeah.
I just don't think I have. I don't remember a clear passage right now across the corpus.
Yeah. Well, isn't there also a truth to it that we aren't realistic in writing? That writing dialogue is intentionally. You've made this point before. If you go into a coffee shop and record a conversation, people don't make sense.
No, they don't listen to each other and they don't make sense, and they're not actually staying on topic.
And so if you were to go transcribe and write realistic dialogue, probably any acquisitions editor is going to say, hey, your dialogue's terrible.
Yeah.
And you could say, no, it's realistic.
Yeah. What it needs to do is give the impression of realism as opposed to being realistic.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is try to actually communicate that sensation of the real. Mm-hmm. Without it being real, because you don't have time for it to be real.
Yeah.
And the reader doesn't have time for it to be real. And so it's all fat brushstrokes, It's all reduction and everything else. And so I think that in devotion, in spirituality, even as I'm talking, I'm becoming more and more convinced that I've actually had characters pray before.
Well, I also think you've had direct imperative, just you haven't mentioned, dear God. Like it's been help me. Like that sort of thing has definitely been in there. And I'm sure there are prayers as well. I should know. We just read through the 100 covers, but
I think that this is it's definitely not a lot of opportunity for quiet devotion in my stories. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at a particular scene. And if somebody had a question about a particular scene, and it was like, why isn't the character praying right now in a traditional sense?
Yeah.
Right now. And then I'd have to answer for that specifically. But I would say that I am always trying to push things along spiritually. But another one of these answers is that my protagonists are never characters who are in a spiritually healthy place, or I would say they're not like Hell's Angels, but they're not in a mature place.
Okay.
So when I start with Cyrus and Antigone, these are not church kids.
Okay.
They're total outcasts. These are the strays.
So that could be part of their weakness, then you're saying. Well,
yeah. I'm trying to. So, in terms of my collective audience and who I'm writing for, I'm trying to write for the people who are, generally speaking, unchurched and Christians. I want to write for Christian kids and non-Christian kids. I'm trying to write for kids, and I'm trying to write for kids who can relate to a brother and a sister who are feeling extreme father hunger and abandonment issues and are feeling kind of adrift and lost. And they are not currently rooted in a close relationship with God.
Okay.
It's not that they're
So a kid who could pull out the Heidelberg right there is a different character.
Yep. And these are not kids. Henry's the same way. These are not kids that know really who they are at all. In any respect. They don't know who they are in society. They don't know who they are in their own family or where they belong, where their father is, who their father was, where he belonged. They're getting swept up into an adventure where they are encountering characters who do believe. And so along the way and through the course of an adventure, you're encountering a John Smith, you're encountering a Rupert Graves, who's part of a society where he is sworn an oath to a religious society, in a religious society, which he takes very seriously. And they're being pulled into this thing. And there are call and response liturgies, and they do have to take an oath that is a religious oath. And they have all these things that are starting to come into their lives. And then down the line, you meet a guy like Brother Niffy, who's like this you start to meet these overtly religious characters. And their understanding is becoming fuller. Like they're encountering more.
Okay.
And it's not like the little atheists. These are not little unbelievers, but neither are most kids. Like most kids in America are not like
overt.
They're not overt unbelievers. They're just kids.
Okay.
And they're kind of just in that kind of static place, in that static position. And that's where I want to find them and grab them and pull them along. And so the motivation behind writing what I write is very driven by my target audience, which is broad cultural readership.
Gotcha. So you would really niche or genre your fiction down with a character who could believably pray.
Yeah. And it's not to say I wouldn't do it. It's not to say that I wouldn't, there's no rule against it. And it's not to say that I would never,
I'm sure listeners will reach out with the thing we forgot.
Yeah.
The moment we forgot.
Yeah. And I'm pretty, I'm really kind of groping around in the dark in my head for some examples, because I know there are some there, some specific scenes with different types of prayers. But really, if you think about my target audience for all of my novels have been broad market. I go on book tours overwhelmingly through public schools and, big conventions and so on. And I'm trying to hand out, as I've said here before, I'm trying to hand out cool drinks of water and, bread and water for kids who've never been fed. I'm trying to hand out soul food. And a ton of Christian kids have found my books and read my books and liked my books, but that's not the exclusive portion of the marketplace. I'm trying to write to readers 12 and up or 8 and up. And that's just any of them. It's basically set an age demo, and anybody over a certain age, I'm trying to write a story that could grab you and sweep you along. And
Gotcha.
that's why I've approached things the way I have. If that answers the question.
I think it does. And the problem is, I think that most people who are writing prayer, it's not coming out of that character. It's coming out of a desire to help you have a moral basically to the story. Or I should, maybe most is too strong of a word, but that would be the temptation.
I can think about like Peace Like a River. There's overt prayer and it's fantastic.
Yeah. From the dad, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember Ruben if he does.
From the dad.
Yeah.
It's really good. I don't want to dismiss it as if it's bad. I want to just.
I think Robinson Crusoe has some pretty overt prayer in it too, where he's on a desert island being like, all right.
Who else are you going to talk to? I really don't. Again, if people had specific questions, I could fire it in and I could answer about specific scenes.
Yeah.
And why I did them the way I did them. But the overarching answer is going to be my target audience. And so something I talk about a lot to young writers. I was actually just talking to an aspiring minister about this, but young writers, my own kids, anybody interested in communication, there's always a triangle. And I probably talked about this before here because I return to it.
Mm-hmm.
there's you, who are you, and where are you located? There's your target audience, and then there's where your target audience should be.
Yeah.
And there's the triangle of who are you, who are they, and where ought they to be. And you want to try to give them whatever you can give them to help them move along their journey towards that destination.
Yeah.
And so you can't make any kind of decision about what kind of content to put in your story or in your written communication or in your film or anything else until you already know the answers to those three corners. Who are you? Who are they? And where ought they to be?
Yeah.
Every piece of narrative art, every piece of communication is going to affect the reader, the listener, the viewer, and affect them in which way. And so if you don't know where you're trying to move them, or you don't know who they are, you can't even have a discussion of what should or should not be in something. You know, it's like what should or should not be in something is entirely answered by who are they?
Yeah.
Who are they and where are they located? And where ought they to be located?
Yeah.
So where are they currently? Where ought they to be? And so when you're making those decisions, if you have an extremely specific answer to that question of who are they, then and where ought they to be, then you can start really tailoring with a lot of specificity what goes into this. So I am writing to Amish wives in abusive relationships.
Yeah.
Where ought they to be? Out. I'm trying to get them out.
Right.
Like, if that's the case, there are going to be some very specific things I'm going to be trying to put into whatever I'm writing. I'm going to try to make this happen. If my goal is I'm writing to human beings, male and female, both above the age of 8, like,
yeah, wow.
And
right.
you know, like that's a huge category. And where am I trying to take them? I'm trying to take them to a place of wonder and joy.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to give them a chocolate chip cookie. I'm trying to give them an experience that will bring with it nostalgia when they look back on it years in the future. Something that will be aromatic. That will be sort of it will smell of all sorts of things that are gospel enriched, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's a Christian kid, it will make sense in a far more tangible way. If it's a kid who's never heard anything about Christianity, then characters like Niffy and John Smith and these other characters will resonate and be really foreign, but interesting in other ways. But it's a very big, huge category. And the goal is to really to edify and to delight. Like my goal is to, to give them something in Christ's name that will better their day, their week, and their memory and their childhoods. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. And so It's a very big thing. Again, if you said, I'm writing for retired U.S. Marines who are suffering from post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
What am I trying to do? I'm trying to bring them peace. It's like, so I wrote the terminal list.
Yeah.
It's like, no. And so actually we're getting all the way into, should I wife shame?
I mean, it's the perfect episode for it.
Yeah. Heather's calling. But no, and she has every right to. Let's be clear. She has every right to call me.
Top priority.
She'll be in my secret phone
next week. For sure. The bat phone will have Heather.
Yeah, it just doesn't mean that I'll necessarily have fewer Tyson phone calls. But
here we're getting into
so if we move into other like really specific goals, or we're moving into really big goals. And here we're getting into rhetoric, the concept of rhetoric and invention, the first canon of rhetoric, which is the discovering the available means of persuasion. So if you're discovering the available means of persuasion, that's you analyzing those 3 points.
Yeah.
Who are you? Who are they? Where ought they to be? What are the things that could potentially move them there? And then you're deciding what to bake into your communication. So any question about what ought to be in or ought to be out has to begin with an absolute knowledge of the audience, or how broad the audience is. Mm-hmm. Specificity of audience or breadth of audience, the author, the writer, the communicator, the filmmaker, the distributor, the market, where it's going to be, and the destination for the audience. So I want to scare the audience into faith. I want to what? So if you're Flannery O'Connor and the audience is whom, and I'm going to write these stories to get them to where, you can kind of reverse engineer what she's doing to try to find the fruitfulness in some of the short stories, not the novels, but the short stories. Like you can look at those things. So once you've analyzed the three corners, you can go through the process of invention and discovering the available means of persuasion.
And those of you who've gotten to take rhetoric from Nate,
you've done this before.
You've done it.
Yeah, and so you're in classical rhetoric at that point.
Yeah,
and that's what you're doing. And so if you have questions about a book for an author, any kind of why questions, start by like analyzing it for yourself a little bit.
Yeah,
who are they? Who is the target audience? Then the question is, what is the goal? And if you know what the author did already, and you know what who the target audience was, then you can start to assess maybe.
Right. Well, one thing about your book, this question's kind of morphed into, the challenge might be, why aren't your books more overtly spiritual, more even overtly evangelical? And then I think it's very helpful to compare with a couple books. Well, I think immediately of Percy Jackson and also of Frank Peretti, and like with spiritual elements there, and your books, and seeing which of those books takes the spiritual world realistically or believes in the spiritual world. And it seems to me very clear that your books have a huge presence of the spiritual and the mythic, like as if it's real. So that means like Percy Jackson's book takes the mythic or the story and treats it as real in a silly way. We have a Hydra wearing a Dunkin' Donuts shirt or something in a Percy Jackson book. Yeah. Your mythical characters are not funny like that. Like, I think your idea is that it would not be fun to meet Gilgamesh.
No, but you can still look at him and be wow, he's wearing some very tight pants.
Yeah, that's true.
However, no, it's still very terrifying.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing.
So people who are asking, I guess, I think there's different ways of communicating that spiritual, when we're looking at the who are you, who are they, where do you want to get them?
Yeah.
Triangle. You do want them to have a deep knowledge of there being more and bigger to the world, like spiritual. The world's not just flat materialism. And I think that is probably why you've gone some of the route that you have. That's not comfortable to, an evangelical trope, or if I can put thoughts into your mouth.
Yeah, I think that is in fact accurate. But also I would say Christians are the worst.
That's our clip for this one, I guess.
No, well,
what do you mean, Nate?
I can qualify and say frequently.
Frequently the
worst. I can get more specific and really outrage some people, but I'll just about which ones are the worst. But Christians really can be extremely finicky and unhappy with you because you never do enough. It's never enough. And so if I am Chick-fil-A and I say, I'm a Christian author, and so what I want to do is I just want to make a really good chicken sandwich. Mm-hmm. And I want to make a really good chicken sandwich because I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. And then there's always going to be people who are saying it's not enough that you're closed on Sunday. And it's not enough that you're openly a Christian. And it's not enough that you're making the best chicken sandwich that you can. Why aren't there Bible verses on this waffle fry container? Mm. Why are you handing chicken sandwiches out the window at all? Why is it not a Gideon Bible?
Okay, and
why is it not? It's like, well, because I'm doing chicken sandwiches. It's a chicken sandwich place.
Yeah.
Well, why aren't you doing something else? It's like, well,
I didn't want to
because I'm not supposed to. That's not what I am called to do. I am doing something else. I am not handing out Gideon Bibles. I am making fantastic spicy chicken sandwiches.
Gotcha.
And it's like, and I'm doing it as a Christian. I'm doing the best of my ability. And
This is a dark parable, but I think people can interpret it.
Yeah, I'm right. and so, but there's always people who are saying, but why aren't you being more overt? Why aren't you blowing this up? Why aren't you stopping doing what you are doing and doing something different? You're like, that's always kind of the question. Why haven't you dialed it? And they want to, it's death by 1,000 cuts too, because it's like, well, but surely you could print a Bible verse on this fry container. Surely a Bible verse would fit on this bag. And surely a second one would fit too, and a third one, and a fourth one. And you know what? Like it's the next
Fries
thing
inside a Gideon Bible.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of, what if you just did the next thing? What if you just did a little bit more? What if you just did a little bit more? It's like, well, if I am here trying to tell good stories, I'm trying to tell stories that are true, good, and beautiful. I'm trying to tell stories that will feed millions of kids and will feed them something true, good, and beautiful, contrary to the food they are getting otherwise, and trying to do it in a way that will affect their imaginations and wake up wonder and joy and peel back some of the blindness in their eyes from a materialistic apathy in the modern world, and actually kind of wake them up to the world a little bit. I will be thrilled. So to be where and you're exactly right. So I am pushing against materialism, and I mean it. You know, I've said before that Rowling writes Harry Potter like she doesn't believe in magic. Percy Jackson it's farcical.
Reardon writes like myths didn't happen.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to write in a way through the Covered Trilogy, through Ashtown, through Hours of Time. I'm trying to write in a way that will like make kids wake up to the world in which God has placed them. Will begin the process of peeling off, you know, the little blinkers around their eyes that are being placed there by their educational system. Can I wake up the wonder? Can I, spark the pilot light in their imagination? Can I wake them up as anti-materialists, in this materialistic age? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to feed them something that will strike them, that they'll love, that will feed them and feed their souls and feed their imaginations in a way that they will be inoculated against blind materialism, and they will be really pushed towards exploring.
You're trying to open eyes.
Yeah, trying to push towards exploring the fantastical, wonderful world in which they've been placed.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do. And then other people say, but that's great. But what if you did evangelism instead?
Yeah.
It's like,
I
have nothing wrong with evangelists. Go evangelist, go. It's just not what I am. I'm Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And the hypothetical objection, we've learned to recognize it, that when someone says, hey, you shouldn't say that because hypothetically, what if this person heard you?
Yeah. What if this imaginary person I made up in my head?
Yeah. You shouldn't praise having children because imaginary.
What if somebody next door that I just made up is hurt?
Yeah.
And they don't want to be told to suck it up, buttercups, ever.
Right.
And so in this case, like, obviously I'm not against evangelism.
Right.
But I am generally against evangelistic art.
Yeah.
Which is just to say propagandistic.
I know it sounds so strong, but there's no way around it. That if you're trying to communicate a message, that's propaganda, not a story. Or I should say, a message that everyone gets the exact same thing out of their story.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the definition of propaganda, right? Because you've put it in the guise of a story. Or maybe it doesn't have to be.
We've talked about this a little bit before, but I would say that when you're telling a story, you want to tell a story about a person.
Yeah.
You want to tell a story about people, and you want the story to be a natural outworking, a natural, like an organic outworking of their narrative. What you don't want to do is start with the conclusion, which is an analytical reduction down to a true or false statement of, from a narrative. And you start with that, and then you start trying to enflesh it. And if you start with this thing, Mother Russia is wonderful, true or false statement, and you say, I'm going to write a story that convinces everyone that Mother Russia is wonderful.
Yeah.
So I have a true or false statement. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to incarnate this into a narrative
Mm-hmm.
backwards, I'm going to go backwards into this, then you're doing propaganda.
Gotcha.
Even
Yeah.
if that true or false statement is good,
Yeah.
even if that's a true statement, even if it is a good statement, and you say, you know what we should do? We should take this true statement and we should like wrap it in this narrative. Then we're going to manipulate the characters and we're going to manipulate the whole thing so that we spoon feed this fortune cookie statement
Yeah.
into the minds of every person who reads this.
Yeah.
Then you end up with, temperance literature. you end
Yeah.
up with bad novels that get you prohibition, bad novels that gets you propaganda. It's propaganda. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so even if the statement's true, even if that thing is a good sentence, it was a good sentence. So, a son should honor his father.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a story, which is now an argument
Right.
to convince somebody that a son should honor his father. It's like, now it's not to say that you should never write a parable that leads somebody somewhere. Of course you can. Christ did, obviously.
That's not the goal of the novel.
It's not what this art form is. It's not what this thing is. And so I don't want to do it.
It's also not where the delight of the novel is, I guess,
No.
is the point. Like where a novel gets fun is when it communicates slant, tells the truth slant.
And it's also important to know that a lot of I've heard way too many Christians say, I want to get into storytelling. I want to get into filmmaking because, Christ communicated with stories. And I think it's the most powerful way to communicate and yada, yada, yada. It's like, go back and read that again. Because sometimes it says that he communicated in a parable so that they would not understand.
Yeah.
Like he actually used stories because they were less effective. They were less clear. And he wanted to hide his meaning. And so he hid the thing via story and walked away.
Yeah.
And don't just think because he told stories that it was so that it would be obvious to everybody. And so this is a fine line. I have no problem with cautionary tales. I have no problem with satire. I have no problem with those things. But I'm not looking to try to reverse engineer morality sentences, truisms into novel formats such that everybody who reads it says, I have come to a wise conclusion.
Yeah.
I have arrived at this sentence. Mother Russia is good.
Yeah.
Like it's just not what I'm signing up for. There are plenty of people who are willing to write pamphlets and
I mean, your point works too, because a novel whose point is Mother Russia is good is so much easier to stand against than a novel that, say, captures Russia in a compelling way. As I know you don't enjoy the Russian novelists as much as your wife, but
come on now.
But yeah,
I love a good Russian novel.
Yeah. But basically the idea, Mother Russia's great. No, it isn't. That's easy.
I can retract that statement. I respect a good Russian novel.
Yeah, I was going to say we've
love is a strong word. Love is a strong word. I respect it.
But you'll feel if you get deep into the Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
You feel Russia in a way that you can't just say no to.
Yep.
You have to have respect.
No, you can have sympathy and you can have affinity for and so on. So I do think that there's a power in fiction that can enable you to see things and appreciate things and relate to things that you would not have been able to otherwise.
Yeah.
But there has to be a certain amount of freedom of natural chemical reaction between these characters and how the story is told.
The world.
And not an author like a Victorian, puppeteer forcing his characters into particular positions to make them reach the meaning that was the goal. And I think that just always results in disjointed and flawed stuff.
There we go.
Ta-da. We're done with Octo Cinco.
Yeah.
This has been Souths.
Another pleasant afternoon, a Monday this time.
A Monday in which we discoursed on how much I love Russian novels.
We should have asked Heather.
When my eyes were opened up and I saw
Hey, it's Brian Cole, and I recently got an email from one of our audio listeners who was saying, hey, I've already listened to both Anne of Green Gables books on Canon Plus, and I'm wondering where the rest of the series is. And I thought, you know what? I should tell people what's gotten onto Canon Plus recently in case they too, like me, have not yet listened to Anne of Green Gables. All I know about Anne is that I think she has red hair and I think she broke a writing slate over a boy's head. Those are the two things I know. Anyways, I wanted to encourage you to take a gander at our children's section, our classic section, and our writing section, because those are kind of three things that overlap with what the soul food crowd is into. Especially, we've been listening to the children's section with all its E. Nesbitt stuff, 5 Children and It, Secret of the Amulet, The Treasure Seekers. Funny stuff, great narrator, and fun to listen to. Of course, if you're looking for good narrators, you also do need to check out Cannonball's own Brave Ollie Possum. If you don't have the Glorch voice as a bedtime routine, I don't know what you're doing. And if you aren't tired of my voice, you can listen to My Father's Dragon, which for some reason I went ahead and read, I think because I'm fond of it. Now you too can listen to me struggle to separate all of the different creatures' voices and keep them straight. Yeah, that's not the best pitch for My Father's Dragon, but it is a good story, which is, I believe, becoming a Netflix series soon. Last thing you might want to check out is the classic series, the Old Mother West Wind series by Thornton Burgess, a bunch of modern-day Aesop fables with tragedy, success, and adventure, all about animals in a wood. Anyways, there's a lot of stuff on there. That's just kind of scratched the surface, but you SASF listeners can try it out for a month on Canon Plus for the low, low price of 99 cents with the code SASF99, SASF99. All right, that's enough of me. Bye.